It's a game that gives you great storytelling elements. I mean, the things you need for story: characters, conflict, challenge, resolution. Is it a comedy or tragedy? Like, all those things are built into a round of golf. So it's something as a writer that you can really lean on.
I'm Mason Reed, and this is Invested in the Game, an original podcast from Charles Schwab. Each episode, we tell the story of remarkable people who have committed their time, resources, and emotional energy into making golf the wonderful and sometimes maddening game that it is. Hello, Invested in the Game listeners. Season 3 is upon us. Thanks for supporting and listening to us thus far. On today's episode, we're speaking with Tom Coyne. Tom's the editor of the Golfer's Journal, hosts the Golfer's Journal podcast. He has a golf course design firm and is best known for his books over the last 20 years, including Paper Tiger and his trilogy of golfing adventures, A Course Called Ireland, A Course Called Scotland, and A Course Called America. Side note, did you know that when you add a fourth to a trilogy, it's called a tetralogy? I had to Google that one. Tom's most recent book, just released in May of 26, is A Course Called Home. This adventure is a bit different. It chronicles Tom's involvement in Sullivan County Golf Club, a golden-era Catskills 9-hole golf course that was on the edge of extinction. What started as a curiosity for a potential magazine article quickly evolved into Tom as a caretaker of the course and eventually an owner. Tom and I spend most of our time talking about his new book and his experience with Sullivan County. You're going to love listening to Tom. He's whip smart and yet has this down-to-earth vibe, sardonic wit, and self-deprecating humor that makes conversations with him so enjoyable. I hope you enjoy listening to our chat as much as I did participating in it. Tom Coyne, welcome to Invested in the Game. Glad to have you here.
Mason, thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled. Charles Schwab's been such a friend of Sullivan County, the golf course I'm involved in, and I really appreciate you supporting now that the book is finally out about it, giving us a chance to chat about it.
I'm looking forward to that, and I'm purposely going to spend the bulk of our conversation on that. There's a few things I want to ask you about in advance of that I think will help some of our listeners familiarize themselves with you. But you are one of the most interesting people in golf. You're an editor of a magazine. You write books. You're a caretaker and owner of Sullivan County Golf Club, which you just mentioned. You're involved in golf course design. I could go on. So thrilled to talk to you about the last part of that, because I think we would need several hours if we actually went through all of your endeavors at this point. So we're going to talk mostly about the last part of that. But I think it would be helpful, Tom. I'd love to understand how you got introduced to golf and writing, but we'll do golf first. When were you introduced to golf in your life? And when did it, if it switched from a hobby to, I don't know, you have the bug or an obsession, or did it tip into something more than just a casual hobby? Can you help us understand your relationship with the game from the early days?
It's been unhealthy from the very start. No, I'd say the bug got in pretty much right away. I started when I was maybe 8, 9 years old. And initially, I remember being resistant to playing golf because, my dad played and my older brother played, and he was a pretty good player. And so there was this kind of like, I don't want to do what my brother does. I'm going to go be good at this. But that didn't last very long because once, Dad took me up to the club for, my first junior clinic, lessons, whatever. And then it became about, well, I wanted to be better than my brother. And also just the, we started playing, I remember playing like junior 9-hole matches and struggling and not liking the feeling of not being good at it and getting very obsessed with trying to get better. So I don't know if that's, it's kind of a funny way to fall in love with something, right? For that I'm bad at it. But I think, you see people who just make it look easy and looks like magic, right? Especially when you're starting and you can't hardly make contact. So I do remember like wanting to be good at golf so badly at a very young age. And it's funny, like that hasn't changed. I won't say how many years I am away from age 9. It's a few, but I'm still chasing like better golf. And I still believe like my best round is coming tomorrow. And I'm still buying swing aids and watching YouTube videos to find my greatest
Sounds a little quixotic at this point, but hopefully you'll catch the windmill, so to speak.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming.
It's right around the corner.
It is. So, but that's what golf does, right? It's this great bait and switch because you'll hit one shot that's as good as you'd ever need to hit a golf shot. And then, you'll hit 80 others that aren't quite so good. So it does give you that feeling of like, you can do this because we actually technically do what like professionals do that we watch them do on television. Granted, we do it much less frequently. Like I can make a 30-foot putt. I can hit the middle of the green. I can hit a fairway. I don't hit as far as I used to perhaps, but I can get it out there to where I need to, so, and it's just like, well, but I only do it twice a round and they do it 67 times a round. So,
right. And say if you're watching LeBron play, like I can never do that.
Can't
There's no world where I can dunk or do
anything. Right. Exactly. But I can do what he just did. Because I did it last year on a Tuesday night. And so,
one of my 10,000 shots, I can do that. They
exactly.
do it at a 90% clip. But
exactly.
And so was golf a recreation and hobby of yours as you entered college and started being interested in writing? And I guess I've never thought about this, but did you catch a writing bug at an earlier age, or was that a teenage college interest? When did that surface for you?
It was actually pretty early. I wasn't sitting around writing poetry as a child or like composing manuscripts as a youth, but writing was always something that I loved to do. And I actually remember in like first grade, I wrote a Christmas story and we had this dictionary of Christmas terms. So I basically plagiarized the whole thing and just used all the words in the dictionary. But showed it to my teacher. She's like, oh my gosh, like look at all these words you're using. But in any event, oh my gosh, my career started with ripping off a dictionary, but wow, I'm just putting this together. So I remember her walking me down to the third grade to read the story to like show off. And I liked the approval that came from something that I wrote, the way that I expressed myself. In school, it was the thing that I was probably best at. And, through high school and college, writing for newspapers, magazines, all that stuff. So there was a progression to where I ended up in a graduate writing program. But like golf was never part of it. Golf remained a hobby. I was serious about it in high school. I tried out for the college team, didn't work out. And after that, golf just became like a hobby. Like I was a really good Monday bar scramble player. I could go out in like the McFadden's Monday outing at whatever golf course and go win the scramble for you. So yeah, my 20s, I was basically winning a lot of like beer t-shirts. That was the extent of my golf accomplishment. But connecting golf and writing was a pretty happy accident.
And your first major thing you did was fiction, wasn't it? The first book
it was,
you wrote?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that most people that are familiar with your writing associate you, I'm going to guess, more with all of the course called travel, where you're kind of the central character in these nonfiction books. But that's not where you started. You started with fiction. That kind of put you on the map, didn't it?
For sure. The course called books have ran circles around my first book, which was a novel called A Gentleman's Game. And that was actually my master's thesis when I was in graduate school. You had to write I was in a fiction program. You had to write a manuscript as your thesis. And I started writing these stories about a caddy because I'd grown up caddying as well as playing golf. And, those stories turned into chapters. And I was like, well, maybe this will be a novel. I mean, I'm 23. Like, I don't know how to write a novel. I hardly know how to write anything. So I strung those together and it got published. It got made into a movie. And, that was nuts.
That's not normal, right? Just for everybody out there listening, that your thesis that would ultimately become a novel became a movie as well.
Yeah, I would say probably not the typical path, but it really skewed my perspective on how like this whole writing career was going to go, because it's like, oh man, I can't wait till next year when I write another book and we have another movie, and that'll be so fun too. And I'll get a better suit for the next premiere, like all that. Yeah, it's like you realize, like, if for a book to be made into a film, it's a once in a lifetime, 1 in a million shot. And I was spoiled right off the start. Yeah, it kind of works backwards. Like, that should happen later in your career, but it was great. And like you said, it kind of put me on the map in the golf space, right? So even though that novel there's golf in it and it takes place at a golf club, it's a coming of age story, really. But because we could put a golfer on the cover and on the golf shelf, suddenly I'm in the golf space, which is for an author is a good place to be. Like golfers buy books, golfers read books, golfers, they're a thoughtful bunch. And I've been happy to stay in that space and have a readership there.
I was going to ask you this later, but I think it probably dovetails better to what you just said, which is, why do you think, for you at least, or for others, golf provides a good environment for storytelling? What is it about golf courses or golfers or the game that seems to lend itself towards good stories?
Yeah. So George Plimpton famously said, the smaller the ball, the better the writing. And, so you get not a lot of great basketball writing out there. Well, there's some, but a lot of good baseball writing. But golf, I would say, has the sort of richest, from Updike to just so many people have done good golf stuff over the years. So, but the question of why, it's a good one. And I think that, golf as a game, you're out there for 4, maybe 5 hours, and the actual action of what's happening is a few minutes, right? So there's a lot of time to talk, to think, to tell stories. There's a lot of space. You spend a lot of time in a round of golf in your head versus other sports that are instinctual, that are reacting, right? You initiate the action in golf. Because I think golf being such a mental game that it perhaps attracts people who are inclined to either write about it or want to read about it. I also think it's a game that sort of takes over your life, and that goes to maybe the difficulty of it, the challenge of it, all the different places you can play it. And so, look, this office that I'm talking to you from is just covered in golf nonsense everywhere. It's like a shrine to this game. And I don't know. If I was a tennis player, I don't know if my office would look like this, right?
Yeah, the courts are generally the same. The balls, and you can also play. You named pretty much everything. You can also play most of your life competitively against anybody. Like Rory McIlroy can play a 20 handicap 95-year-old man or woman and have a competitive match, and there's nothing like that. I think. Maybe that helps also, that you have these characters going through it for decades and decades, and that 95-year-old still trying to get better, and maybe watching these YouTube videos you're talking about.
Exactly. You're going to have a long life in this game, a long career. You're going to have all sorts of experiences, and we share them with each other, right? We share them after a round. The story of your round of golf sometimes is almost as important as the round itself, it seems. Your memories of it, the things you learn about yourself. Golf gives you so much to write about. So it's a game that's built on story. It's a game that gives you great storytelling elements. The things you need for story: characters, conflict, challenge, resolution. Is it a comedy or tragedy? Like, all those things are built into a round of golf. So it's something as a writer that you can really lean on. The setting is right there in front of you, and it's a beautiful one, and it's interesting. Yeah. So all the pieces that I would teach in my creative writing classes about, okay, these are the things you need for story. Golf gives them to you in abundance.
Before we jump to your latest book, you found yourself as, I suppose, the main character. You're talking about characters in these somewhat wild adventures after your fiction book. So from Paper Tiger through the Course Called trilogy. What was that transition like, where you said, I'm going to do this adventure? I don't know if you thought you were going to write a book, or you decided that later, but either way, you found yourself becoming a character in your own stories, which is obviously quite different from writing a fiction book, even if it was rooted a little bit in your experiences as a caddy. What was that like to all of a sudden be writing books about yourself and what you were doing and the experiences that you were having?
It was tricky, right? And I had to adjust to that, because it's one thing if someone doesn't like your book, and it's another thing if they don't like you because you're in the book. They don't like, they're like, well, I didn't like that character. Wait, that was me.
That's hurtful. Yes, yeah.
Right. So there's another element of pressure. And there's also, like, in all these stories, like, I've either, in Paper Tiger, I tried to play pro golf. So, like, I had to actually accomplish something. And so there's not just the sort of pressure of writing the book. There's, like, creating and living a life that's interesting enough to become a book.
Right.
Right. So that's a little bit different. But I think at the end of the day, the difference between writing fiction and what I would call creative nonfiction, which is an oxymoron, but it's basically nonfiction where you're applying the tools of the fiction writer. So can you write scene? Can you write dialogue? How do you develop characters? All this stuff. Like the tool, it's the same toolbox. It's just that in doing nonfiction, obviously you're held to truth and honesty about what actually happened, and you're given the events rather having to invent them. So I just kept trying to put myself, with the last, 5 books, put myself in positions where the circumstances would give me something really rich. And then I could apply the tools that I'd, worked on in graduate school or my whole life that are just really the fundamentals of storytelling. So I don't look at them as being all that different, though I think my wife is. I do want to go back to writing fiction, and I think my wife is looking forward to that because I think she's tired of being a character in all my stories.
And to the family disruption that comes with long travel, or
there's
50 states of golf travel, and all these.
But I think it's weird for her when a stranger comes up to her and is like, "Oh my gosh, like how's your house, or how was that trip, or this, that?" And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "Remember, you were in the book too. Did you read it? Did you even read my book?"
The challenge of nonfiction, I suppose. So speaking of putting yourself in interesting situations, Schwab connected with you probably in 2023 would be my guess. And we shared your story about Sullivan County in one of our Challengers films. So that was almost 3 years ago. And at that moment, you had just started to take on this project. You were on a mower. You were figuring out that you had forgotten to order golf balls. You were in the thick of it in 2023. The podcast will come out right about the time your latest book is out, called A Course Called Home, which is about Sullivan County.
Yeah.
So we haven't chatted. There's this 3-year gap now between when we last connected with you, and
changed?
Now there's a lot's changed. So for people not as familiar with the Sullivan County story, can you just give a little bit of a summary of how that came to be? And then we'll talk about the book in a minute, but just how the project came to be, because it was one of these, maybe serendipitous or coincidental life things that morphed into something much bigger.
Yeah, it's turned my life into something I never expected. My life, compared to 4 years ago, it's hardly recognizable. Now having this golf course in my life, and this whole thing started with a DM on social media from someone with a handle Gorse Nod, who was a superintendent at a 9-hole golf course in the Catskills. And I had a vague notion of where the Catskills were. But he said, this course, it's almost 100 years old. It's going to close. And I'm trying to keep it open. Would you like to write about it? Do you know anyone who would be willing to invest in it, to try and bring it back? And it sounded like a magazine story. And so I went up in like a March, wanted to meet Gorse Nod, who ended up being Sean Smith. And we hit it off. We just kind of saw a lot of things the same way. And his sort of passion for wanting to save a 9-hole golf course because it meant so much to him and to the community. It was just something that I wanted to be a part of. And it felt bigger than the magazine story that I thought might come out of the trip. And at the time I had a book deal and without a subject. And I thought, well, what if like this became like we bought a zoo? The current owners of the place were wonderful. They'd had it for a few years and just couldn't make the golf go. They were trying to save it themselves. And so they said, hey, if you want to have it for a year, you cover everything, the bills, taxes, utilities, everything, like it's yours. You can just have a year to like see what happens and see if you can do something with it. And then you could have the option to buy it. Because I certainly wasn't not in a position to be buying golf courses, and I'm still not. So that's what I did. I said, let's go for it. And I moved up to the lower Catskills and to Liberty, New York, to dirty dancing country. And it became my summer home. And I learned how to mow fairways and cut cups and maintain a golf course and, and try to run a business. It's a funny thing to go from a writer staring at a screen all day, or where you spend most of your time in a room by yourself, and then having a going concern. It's quite an adjustment, but you need challenges to tell stories, and you need problems. Problems become material, and so the place gave me plenty of material.
Was your diving headfirst into mowing grass and doing all of the operations of the place a fiscal function, or was it both? That I want to do this to understand what it's like to be doing all of the work that goes into a golf course, while also you didn't have the revenue probably coming in anyway. So did that kill two birds basically by doing 100%.
that? That was yeah, absolutely. Because one, it was, our greens crew is 2 people. So if on days that I was there, which the first year was most days, if I could get on a mower and cut fairways, which was the only thing I was trusted with. So yes, right. That's another person we don't have to pay. So that's great. Because we had 2 nickels to rub together. But then it was like, if I'm doing this, I want to do it all, right? Like if I'm going to run a golf course, I want to do it from every angle. I'm going to stock the shop. I'm going to get a logo. I'm going to, we're going to redo this. We're going to redo that. I'm going to learn how to take care of all this stuff. I want to see what goes on in the maintenance barn. And so, yeah. And not only like selfishly, because I was curious, but also for the book. Like I wanted to, if I'm writing about like, what's it like to run a golf course, I'm not going to just show up and write paychecks. I'm going to get my hands dirty. And they got quite dirty, actually.
Yeah, and the book starts there. I just got my copy yesterday, and I've only read a few pages, and it just, I'm not giving anything away on the first page. I mean, it starts right with cleaning blades and how to repair mowing equipment. I mean, it is...
Stuck in the mud, yeah.
You were stuck in the mud. Did Sean allow you to expand your responsibilities? Did you get to touch the greens ever? I know you raked bunkers, you cut holes, but did you get to the point where you were at least proficient at anything that needed to be done?
No, I did not. I got to the point where I got pretty good at mowing fairways. And you'd want to be playing the course after I mowed the fairway, because the fairway would have probably gotten a little wider. Because it's just always easier to take a little extra than to try to hit that line perfectly and leave some, because that looks terrible. So over the course of the season, fairways got bigger and bigger.
It's a friendlier golf course. It's very modern of you to have wide fairways.
So modern. But no, fairways were my specialty. And Sean would have all these patterns like, I want you to do this and do that, because last time we cut it this way and cut it that way. And then, I mean, all these things you learn about, like if you're cutting fairways and you're not out there before the dew dries, man, you're in so much trouble, because you just lose where you've gone. Now, like more expensive fairway mowers have like little foam things that drop dots along your fairway to give you your mow lines. Like now, I love that I can talk about mow lines now. This adventure's given me a lot of interesting knowledge. And if you don't have that kind of stuff, you're just out there blind. So it's been, so I'd get out there early before the dew dried and try Sean's new pattern, but I'd usually end up just doing a Zamboni, because that was the easiest. Just loop around until it's all done. Yeah, loops.
Don't try not to create corners on the fairway that they can't mow the next day.
Yeah, this is how things have changed for me. Like when I look at like golf courses that have that like hexagonal, like that striping or whatever, that just blows my mind. Like the work and the time and the costs of the machinery and all that goes into making a fairway just look like that. Things we absolutely take for granted. I certainly don't take them for granted anymore.
I think about that a lot when I'm out on the course, that, these crews, and you start to talk about this in the book at the beginning, but they operate a lot in the cover of night, or at least at the very early. And it's just like, a lot of golfers just show up and have no concept of what has gone in, from everything from fertilizer to mowing and everything in between, and native grass. And I think taking it for granted is probably an understatement. So that was starting in 23, and you went from magazine story to, I actually might be interested in caretaking this and being a part of this. And then did you have to quickly figure out, how am I going to monetize this? Because if you've got an option to buy it, you had to start thinking about how it could actually make money, which the owners who had given you this deal, I'm guessing, hadn't quite cracked the code on that just yet, or else they wouldn't have done what you were able to do. But did you have to start quickly figuring out how the heck this turns into a viable money-making operation after you've learned how to do the mowers for a little bit?
I did, because I got it to a point where we weren't losing money, and we were even making a little money, and mostly out of like, and now we had logo and merch, and like, and it was a cool story that like golf social media was excited about, and like people were joining from like all over the place, because you could join for $450 or whatever. So we were getting memberships from all over the place, and we had money. But just, enough money to the status quo, right? Like we weren't buying any new things or hiring any new people, but we were keeping it going, and that was cool. But what's the future, right? That's just keeping your head above water barely. So, I had to put on a business hat, which is a a hat I did not know that I owned. So I thought about what the property had going for it, aside from like a really charming golf course on the side of a mountain. We had a lot of extra acres that we didn't use for golf and probably couldn't because it would either be wetland or on the side of a mountain. So, what about homes here? And what about lodging? What about hospitality? And that's how the original owners got involved, that was their plan for it. And then they got busy with a lot of other projects. So I went to them and said, all right, what if you guys stay on, you get the clubhouse going because you do hospitality very well. We find, 30 home sites. We find some space for a lodge out there, maybe do some glamping and stuff like that and turn it into a destination. And then the money that I can bring, we'll put that into the golf course. Now, granted, I'm giving up 50% equity in, I'm going in a partnership. So I'm not buying the whole thing outright. But that way we can get all this stuff done. And we did it ridiculously cheaply in golf terms, like how much golf projects can cost. We did it very, very, very low budget. But we rerouted, fixed up the course, built a driving range, a putting course, and we did all that for $750,000, $800,000.
Wow.
Yeah. We don't have irrigation. Our irrigation is pretty much hand done off the back of a truck. And Sean now has a new system where he like pumps water down the hill. You just like using gravity, and it's a wild rigged system to get water to the greens. But most of the course,
but to put that in perspective for people out there, golf courses. It would be hard to build an 18-hole golf course these days for under $30 or $40 million. I'm guessing something like that. And many of them can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. So the fact that you did all this rehabilitation and got it, I just want to give some point of reference for that being under $1 million.
Yes, it was a very different kind of project in those terms. Because, if we wanted to irrigate the course, that's going to cost you a couple million off the top. And we're just talking about 9 holes. So, so we put the money in, where we thought it would be best spent. But still, to get that back, you're never going to get that back off $25 green fees. So it's like, all right, but if we have these home sites and we do some other stuff, we can. And so, again, my partners up there, that's their business. They're very good at it. So eventually, we'll have some homes on the property, and that'll be wonderful. This was a part of the world where for decades, people came every summer, spent the whole summer, and, with these huge resorts, again, like these dirty dancing places. And it's such a beautiful part of the world, and it just went out of fashion, and people started going elsewhere. And now people are starting to rediscover it. So if we can, be there as they do, that's what we'd like to do.
Well, that's awesome. Where does the balance happen between I'm writing a book and I'm doing this without thinking of writing a book? Where I'm sure thoughts come into your head that you can't get out of your head about how this was potentially becoming a book. But how did you manage that when you were trying to do all of this work, get it set up as a business, and try to prop it up for future success for the community, financially viable, all these things, while also thinking there's probably a book in here somewhere? Did you take notes, or how did you think about it, and how did you handle that balance?
Yeah, well, it's good. All the books, from Paper Tiger, Course Called Ireland, Scotland, America, like I've approached them all the same way, that if the premise is strong enough and the situation for me difficult or uncomfortable enough, that something's going to come out of it that's going to give me something to write about, right? Like the Irish have an expression, good news is no good for telling, right? Nobody wants to hear about how great your day was and how smoothly everything went. So I've always tried to give myself, whether it be doing Ireland on foot or trying to play all 50 states, like make the challenge a level of absurdity to it, so that you're going to find yourself in some situations that are going to be really rich with story. And me trying to run a business, the absurdity factor was off the charts. So I knew that there was going to be story. And when I go into all of these projects, I'm only thinking about what I'm trying to do as a golfer or a traveler or a golf course owner or operator. Now I'm taking notes every evening. I'm downloading. It used to be like, and when I did Ireland, it was more romantic. I'm journaling in the corner of the pub at night, everything that happened. Now I'm dictating it into a phone, which is slightly less romantic.
Same concept, though. You're sharing your day's thoughts and
getting the words down, what happened. And there's some days when nothing happened and there were no notes. But a lot of days it was, okay, I wanted to collect art. Who told what joke? What happened when, Sean got attacked by bees again or whatever. And they're not terribly extensive notes, because I think at least for me, when I sit down to write, the stories that have stuck with you and that are like on the tip of your tongue and ready to be told, they're the ones that should be in the story. I can always go back to my notes to fact check them or see what actually did it, when did that happen or whatever. But, I think with this book over so many years, it was supposed to be 1 year. And then my editor's like, wait, you're buying the course? So now I want to hear about that. And then and he's like, you're redoing the course? I want to hear about that. So it became a 3-year book. But when I sat down to write it, I had 500 pages of notes, but I almost never had to go back and look at them.
Wow. I was going to ask you about that. And I know it sounds like a bit of a remedial or obtuse thing of like, how do you write a book? I'm sure there's different ways to write a book. You might have the archetype of the writer who goes away and sits in a cabin and shuts everything off and out comes a book a few months later. In your case, was it more organic, or did you actually get to a point where you had all your notes and then you started to write a narrative, or you started to write a manuscript? How do you actually write a book in this case?
Yeah, so this has been consistent through, all the nonfiction books, is where I'll go, I do this thing. This one's a little bit different because the story's not over. Like, you can go play Sullivan County and I'll be there this summer, and the story goes on. But, I'll finish a trip or arrive at some point where I'm like, okay, this is the end of what I'm going to write about, and not do anything for a little while, let it sit for a couple months and let it just kind of roll around in my head until I know what the story is about, until I've really put my finger on, okay, this is a story about this person trying to do this thing, and these are the things that were opposing them, right? Which is just like the classic 3 pieces of a story. And sometimes it takes a little while to figure that out. Going into it, you think it's like, okay, this story, it's going to be, we bought a zoo, and it's just all these crazy things that happen when you try to buy a golf course. And trust me, there's plenty of that. But it's like, oh no, you know what? This is really about like a dreamer. This is really about like this guy, Sean, who hit me up on social and wouldn't let go of a golf course. And like, what if we didn't let go of the things in our lives that were difficult, and he didn't. And look at what happened, and I'm like, okay, now if I'm going to write about that, now I know how to approach the book. So it takes time. But in the moment when you're running carts and trying to like make sure the fairway is getting mowed or make sure the greens are rolling, none of that occurs to you. It's in there, but it's not at the front of your mind. You're trying to get through the day. So yeah, it takes some time to at least for me to understand what the book is going to be about. And then once I'm there, yeah, I do actually do that creepy, The Shining retreat usually. And go
locked away in your writer's shed for a little while.
All work and no play. And now actually that we have a home in the Catskills near the golf course, that's where I went and, spent a month or as long as I can get away with. And I need to do that to get myself started, to be completely away from the email and the distractions and the whatnot. But once I've done that, once I'm on a roll, once I'm okay, now I'm in the book. Once the book becomes the first thing you think about in the morning and the last thing you think about at night, you're good. But it takes a little while for it to become that.
One more question just on the book writing process that I thought of as you were saying this. Do you write a book, in this case, let's use your most recent, chronologically, or is this like Pulp Fiction? You're writing like something over here that's out of order and then you have to sequence it together? Or when you started that month process, do you basically say, all right, I'm starting from the beginning?
No, it's pretty chronological. But I think with all the books, tried to identify, all right, what was the biggest problem? Give me a crisis, thinking back, what was the trouble that I kept having or that I had, so in the Ireland book opens with me almost getting eaten by a dog. Paper Tiger opens with me trying to hit a golf shot at Canadian Tour Q School and being scared to death. And so starting with a problem and then working where you're on this battlefield of I'm unprepared for this. I don't know what's going to happen here. I'm stuck. I'm in trouble. And then it's oh, how did I get here? Well, let me tell you. I just front loading it that way so that your reader knows that all right, there's going to be some stuff in here and we'll get to it. Rather than starting with, well, one day I wandered up to the Catskills.
Yes.
I found myself a little golf course.
This is where your writing, which your talented writing and your professor self of teaching writing come into play. You're helping us understand how you stitch stories together in addition to you doing it yourself.
Well, you have to lead strong,
Yeah, exactly. A couple of future looking things here, and then we'll let you go. When we did the film with you, which I watched again this morning in advance of hopping on the podcast with you, you said, because this is 2023, you said, I have no idea how this story ends. It could be comedy, it could be tragedy, but you didn't know, which would make sense when you were early days at Sullivan. And then you just said, hey, it's going strong if people want to go up there this summer. So you finished a book. Is the story still going? In your mind, can we close the thought from the video 3 years ago of not knowing how the story ends because this is a living, breathing thing? This is not like you've played 50 states of golf and you've checked it off and completed it. I can't wait to read the book regardless if the story is still unfolding. So I'm just curious how you would talk about that now 3 years later.
I mean, the story definitely has an ending because there's we arrive at a place at the end of the book where it feels like complete, like we are at a very different place on the final page than we were at the first. So, yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is that this place still exists and I'm still there doing the things that I'm doing in the book. Some of the cast of characters has changed. Yeah, our circumstances have certainly changed, but I still think like long term, like the health of Sullivan County, I hopefully the book is a nice boost for it. But we still need golfers and support and members and people to come find us and people who believe in community golf and rural golf and affordable golf. I mean, this is not a place that was hit by the COVID boom in golf did not affect Liberty, New York, where you basically have a golfing population of X people, that whatever the number is, right? So if you're a community that relies on people to come to it, we still need that. So, and we would love for anyone to be part of the next chapter of Sullivan County by joining today for the low price of $500. Can you believe you can be a member of a Met Section Golf Club for the year for $500?
No.
I can't believe that, Mason.
And also, I think that it, good logos go a long way, and you have one of the best logos out there. So if
George Pepper just did a book, The Best Logos in Golf, and we're in it. I can't believe it. And those logos are about 3 years old. It's so cool. It
really is good, and that goes to show how important that is to golf nerds like you and me.
Hugely.
So you already talked a little bit about what's next for Sullivan County. Is it too soon to ask you what's next for you? And I guess that's also awkward. It's not like you're like leaving Sullivan County and then there's this new thing and that's in your past, because that'll still be a part of you for many, many, many years to come. But do you have, and you don't have to share them, but are there some other things brewing in your head that you're going to put yourself into yet another crazy situation here in the future?
No, there's 100%. There's a lot brewing, but I think a course called, I don't know what else I have left in that arena. I've done the travel I want to do, and I bought a golf course at this point. Like, I don't know what there's you have to really want to do something and be so passionate about it, and for it to be so obvious about the next step in your life, for it to become a book project or something like that, because it takes over your life for years. So I don't have anything on the course called front doing that right now.
If your wife is listening, she's recording this and putting it somewhere in the kitchen, like he said it. He said it on the record.
She knows. I would love to get back to writing fiction. So, hopefully that's where things start to go. But it's tricky because, there's an audience now that has enjoyed Touch Wood, and thank God that they have, and hopefully they enjoyed the next one, that they've enjoyed the Course Called series, and maybe they're more inclined to read nonfiction than fiction. Men are generally more inclined to read nonfiction than fiction. My audience definitely skews male. So, we'll see what happens. I'll have to work in some battle scenes and some wizards or something, and we'll be fine. Golfing wizards and with vampires.
I love it. Yes,
and we'll take over the world.
Just put a bow on a Course Called and move on to like superhero stuff.
Whatever,
and you'll definitely get a movie. All right, last question. We ask everybody this, and I cannot wait to ask you this question. When you think about any part of golf, any part of it, either amateur, golf courses, professional, anything. What gives you optimism about the future when you think about some portion of golf, or what comes to mind that gives you a positive trajectory about golf in the future?
So I'll just give you something recently. I went down to the Caddyshack Invitational. It's very much like the Masters in every way. No, it's about as far as one can get from...
I was like, not the one I'm familiar with, but okay.
It was wild. The Murray Brothers Caddyshack Invitational in St. Augustine, Florida, 25th of their celebration. And they raised a lot of money for charity. It's super fun. A lot of celebrities, and it's such a huge party, incredible music. Like they really blow it out. And I was down there, and I was in the airport. And so I was flying into Jacksonville, and I was looking around, and as you're waiting, praying for your golf clubs to come off the conveyor belt, and here they come, and there's like 25 bags coming off, and there was no one else on that flight going to the Caddyshack event, but they were all going to play Sawgrass. Some were going to Sea Island, whatever, and they were all they were all younger than me, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. Like, they were all 30-something-year-olds. Golf has changed in that I wouldn't have pegged any of them as like country club members. And when I was growing up, you didn't play golf in Philadelphia unless you were the country club member, right? So, they're that younger golfer who consumes a lot of their golf via YouTube or Instagram, whatever. And then they spend their golf money on these golf trips and golf experiences, right? So the golfer has changed a little bit. But they're younger, and they're passionate, and they're knowledgeable too, because they're listening to golf podcasts and they're reading the Golfer's Journal or whatever. And that's really cool. And we certainly see that at the Golfer's Journal, how many, young, informed people want great golf stories, and they want golf to be part of their lives. So certainly a time not too long ago when all those golf bags would have belonged to dudes older than I am. And so it was pretty cool to see all these young guys who were like, dude, I saw you on Instagram, and I'm like, is golf cool? What happened? Yeah. Golf's cool.
Well, we spent all this time talking and didn't get into your work at the Golfer's Journal, but I think that Golfer's Journal has played a major, major role in that. And there's others. There's an ecosystem of content and media companies that have helped with that. But I mean, that's wonderful to see. I agree with you. And I think that someday when we're talking a little bit more about your other endeavors, we can talk about that, because that really has tapped into that, the Golfer's Journal, Broken Tea Society, and all the different ways people are just taking golf in a way that you and I didn't really grow up with. It's a different way to do it.
Exactly. It is. It's exciting.
Thank you so much for your time, Tom. It's good to see you after a few years and talk to you. For anybody listening out there, May 5th is the date that A Course Called Home is coming out. You can read all about the journey of Sullivan County Golf Club, and also you could become a member. You could go join, go play in the summer and enjoy the Catskills and see what everybody was loving for almost 100 years up there, and will continue to love. So thanks for all you're doing, Tom. Thanks for your time, and good luck in everything. Good luck with Sullivan County, and good luck with a fiction book in our future.
There you go. Thanks, Mason. Thanks for having me, and huge thanks to Charles Schwab for being such a support.
Happy to do it. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
So that's it for us today. Tom's new book, A Course Called Home, is available wherever you buy your books or audiobooks. You can also go to tomcoyne.com. That's TOMCOYNE.com. Or search for Coyne Writer on X, Facebook, and Instagram. For all of Schwab's golf content, including our films, tournament news, and promotions, check out schwabgolf.com. If you've enjoyed the show, which we hope you did, we'd be really grateful if you'd leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, a rating on Spotify, or feedback wherever you listen.